Good evening. It's wonderful to be here with you, and a little bit of a change in tempo now from the partying, festive mood that we're all in at the moment, to talk about something a little bit more serious, transitioning home from combat. This is based on experience over the last number of years working with service members coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan and their families. And I hope that by the end of this, my goal for this talk, by the end of this, is for you to have a little bit of a different appreciation for some of the experiences that our service members have, and also a few tools to sort of help to welcome, be part of this larger community, welcoming them back from the combat zone. Over 2.5 million U.S. men and women have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. They've faced considerable challenges. These are the surveys that we've done in infantry units over many years, and the majority of our infantry soldiers and Marines have faced direct combat. The majority have known someone personally who has been seriously injured or killed. Almost 2/3 have felt the helplessness of being unable to assist women and children in the combat zone. Almost 20% have been wounded or injured themselves, and 12% of the soldiers that we surveyed in our studies of infantry units had actually been hit and their protective gear had saved them, so about as close as you can come to losing your life. Not only have they been engaged in direct combat, but they've also been conducting peacekeeping, humanitarian, and reconstruction missions in this very complex environment, working in Iraq and Afghanistan. War is extremely hard on the body. They are sometimes carrying upwards of 100 pounds of gear and body armor over this kind of a terrain. Also working in urban settings. Also doing a lot of nighttime operations, where we've actually surveyed infantry units and found that the average amount of sleep that a lot of our infantry soldiers and Marines have gotten, it's been 5 to 6 hours per 24 hours, and this goes on for months. A lot of the operations are at night, so their circadian rhythms are completely dysregulated. That's the normal physiological and neurological processes that help us sleep restfully. And as you can imagine, this the expectation that this will just reset when people come back from the combat zone, reset quickly, is an unrealistic expectation. That's not the way the physiology of the body works, and it can take a very long time for the reset to occur. When our service members come home, I hear from their families. Often they'll say things like, he's not the same person as he was before deployment. He's on edge all the time. He reacts to the littlest of things. He's irritable. He seems detached, numb. I'm not sure if he loves me anymore. So I invite you all to consider a few things in terms of how we can all as a community contribute to facilitating a healthy transition. And no matter what kind of political views we have about war, these wars over the last 12 years have been unique in the level of support that people have given to our service members and veterans. There are 4 things that I think that we can all do as a community. The first is to dispel myths and stereotypes. There's a perception that the military recruits from disadvantaged populations, from people who have limited options in life, and that's absolutely not true. There's a perception that that individuals who are recruited into the military have a higher propensity toward mental illness because of some of the maybe some of their background, growing up in difficult circumstances. This is not true. Our military recruits a healthier segment of the population. It's predominantly a young population, mostly men, about 90% men. But if you look at that demographic group, the military actually recruits a better educated, higher amount of high school diplomas, college credits, and both mentally and physically more healthy. There's a perception that all veterans coming back from war have post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, or that they're violent, maybe as a result of their PTSD. They're more violent. Again, these are perceptions that society often has about veterans often reinforced by news media focused on veterans in particular. But what we know is that the vast majority of people who go to war and come home, they come home healthy. They're affected by their experiences, but they don't develop PTSD. Only a small percentage of people develop PTSD, somewhere around 5 to 15 or 20% at the most, depending on the level of combat exposure. Oftentimes they have greater control over their emotions precisely because of the type of work that they've had to do. Justice Department statistics show that actually veterans have lower rates of incarceration than non-veterans. So again, we need to dispel myths and stereotypes. The next thing, businesses sometimes will not hire veterans or will be reluctant to hire veterans as a result of those stereotypes. They really should be reaching out to hire veterans because of the type of occupational experiences that veterans have had. Professionalism, discipline, maturity, life experiences, leadership. These are people who put their life on the line for others. The second thing is to understand and accept the reality that when service members train to go to war and they go to war, when they come home, they're not the same person as they were when they deployed. You are pretty much forever changed by your experiences working in a combat zone. And that doesn't mean bad or good, it's just different. Once a warrior, always a warrior is a term that our service members and veterans resonate with, and it's something that we as a society need to understand. Just a brief word about post-traumatic stress disorder. It exists on a continuum of normal reactions to trauma. We all in our life at some point will be faced with traumas. Most of us are faced with some sort of significant traumatic event during our life, or really significant life challenges at times. And the reactions, most of the reactions that occur after trauma are normal reactions, and it's only when those reactions interfere with one's life, one's ability to have happiness, one's ability to have meaningful relationships, that we start to talk about it as a disorder. But it's important to realize that sometimes it's difficult to know where in there the line is between normal and abnormal. I see a lot of service members with very significant symptoms of PTSD that are interfering with their lives now, but they're still the guys you want on your team downrange. And that's a paradox which we don't really talk about in society as much as we probably should. A lot of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder are also adaptive beneficial functions in the combat environment. You want to be hyper alert in that environment. That's called situational awareness. You want to be able to channel your anger in a way that is useful. And anger it's adrenaline, it's the energy that gets the mission done. It obviously can cause problems for people when they come home, but it's an emotion. It is an emotion which our service members learn to channel. It helps to control fear. It helps to control physical pain if you're carrying a lot of gear and you have wear and tear and musculoskeletal pain. And it helps to give the focus and concentration that one needs in combat. Being detached or numb, which can really affect relationships when our service members come home, stems from that emotional control, that ability to control one's emotions in very, very difficult circumstances. Even, for instance, when you lose a team member, you have to be able to go on with the mission, which is very difficult. And reliving combat experiences, guilt or second guessing, is part of the normal human response to try to figure out what happened, and also to learn from it. And it's deeply rooted in military training, after action reviews, where every detail of a mission is gone over to find out what worked well and what didn't work so well. The third thing that we can do is have some understanding of the key ingredients to help with transition, and these are things that we can all apply in our life when we all face life difficulties. The first is recognizing that there is no on-off switch for the physiological responses to trauma. Threat and trauma, fight or flight reflexes. These are limbic system processes that affect the whole body through the autonomic nervous system, the part of the nervous system that controls all of our automatic functions like breathing and digestion and respiratory rate, blood pressure, etc. And there is no on-off switch. There's no reset button. I wish there was. The best that we can do is to build in kind of a dial, and each person has to individually find their own way to do that. It could be mindfulness or meditation. It could be dance. It could be hunting. It could be kayaking. Whatever it is, it's not going to be helpful for people to use alcohol or substances. We have a huge problem with self-medication with alcohol and substances because that can seem to help at first, for instance, with getting to sleep, but it only makes things worse. So figuring out ways to dial back the physiological reactivity is very important. The other things that are I think the most healing that the research has shown is the level of connection to other people, loving people, and the ability to narrate and share the experiences that you've had in life. And that can be very difficult for these veterans to do. Some of these experiences are very difficult to talk about, but it is an extremely healing thing to find someone who you can trust to talk about your experiences. Acceptance is the ability to accept the emotions of what's happened in one's life, including emotions like grief. It's the ability to forgive yourself for things that have happened in the past, and to value yourself, to believe in yourself. And finally, humor is just the saving grace for all of us. The last thing we can do is all work to reduce the stigma of mental illness. We all are very much, very likely all of us are touched by mental illness in one way or another, either personally or in a close family member or friend. And oftentimes we bear those struggles as if we're alone, when in fact we're connected to everyone in this experience in one way or another. And so overcoming stigma is a huge thing that we all need to work to do collectively. We don't have to do what this soldier did, which was to create an unauthorized patch that he put on his uniform declaring his diagnosis to the world, but there's other ways that we can do that. I'm not sure how long his leaders let him keep that patch on his uniform. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to speak with you today. Thanks.